Welcome back to another episode of our Mega-lo-Mania in Unreal Engine. So, last stream was Saturday, I believe, and made some progress on the research panel. And I have managed to make some more progress with that. And just quickly jump in and demonstrate some awkward debugging. Let's just get rid of that. Something else I was looking at. Okay, so it turns out that there is nothing in the research panel, and I know why that is. I was making some changes. Did not leave it in the best of states. Put back what I broke yesterday. I think must have just disconnected something somewhere. Let's try. Here we go. It might have something to do with it. That's at least where the error was. See if that works now. Okay, good. So the implementation of these pretty much remains unchanged, but we're able to select, allocate researchers, and the clock ticks, and the clock completes, and the technology disappears, but then it gets re-added. That's the problem or the current issue that I need to address. So we can kind of see that it's finished because it disappears from the top of the list and gets awkwardly added back to the bottom of the list. This timer is running on kind of, so in that case it doesn't show up. The timer is running off kind of an approximation of the actual original game. So we'll just cover a few bits and pieces of how that gets put together. So the event tick in this, so we are in the research panel. Most of this remains unchanged except we've got this new section here. I just confirm that. Yeah, so I've made some minor changes to the creation of the widget, I think maybe, but other than that, this is the main thing. Unfortunately, this is something that happens at the end of the process, so I'll get back to that. We have within the castle a number of functions now handling the research. So rather than get available technologies that create this array of names, we are using the research projects object. I think we did introduce this on the stream on Saturday. So that remains largely unchanged. The big change is with the handle research. So there's some little notes on the seconds per kind of tick of the clocks or tick of the game based on the game speed. So we have slow game speed, medium game speed, and fast game speed, which is the appropriate seconds per tick. And that's useful, particularly related to how fast the research progresses. So handle research iterates through all of the research projects, and for each of those research projects if there are researchers, we then set the elapsed time and the remaining time based on these bits of calculations, which we'll cover in a moment. We then determine using this, which is the elapsed time or the result of the initial minus elapsed, so effectively the remaining time. If that's less than or equal to 0, then we handle the research being complete, and we do that by simply ensuring that the elapsed time equals the initial time and the remaining time is 0, and we call this complete research project function. The basis of the calculations for research is fairly straightforward. This gets the effective ticks per second based on these game speeds that we've outlined here. To do that, we multiply the delta by 1. That would have effectively equate to 1 unit a second within Unreal Engine. So we divide that by how many seconds are in a game tick, and then we add the result to our elapsed time. So that goes up approximately 0.014, something like that, per frame per handle research call, which happens on the tick. That's the actual game engine tick, not the kind of game progress tick as these are referring to. And from that we determine whether there are researchers, because we kind of only do all of this if that boolean and that branch is true. So we say if the researchers is greater than 0 and the remaining time is greater than 0, then we carry on, and that's when we do all these calculations. So we add the kind of calculated time to the elapsed time, then we take off from the initial time the elapsed time in this case, and the initial time is the time the data table says that particular research should take. So for example, the rock is to research the rock, it's about 25 times round the clock, so about 200-300 I think in total. And what the sum basically divides the initial time by the amount of researchers. So I did put together a quick spreadsheet to demonstrate that, or the actual Mega-lo-Mania spreadsheet. So if the initial time is 200, so that's 200 kind of ticks of a clock, so more so that's approximately 25, well not 25, 200 would be probably around 15-16 cycles. When we divide that by the researchers, it gives us kind of a fairly, well, it's a somewhat of a linear reduction in time, but it starts off quite heavy, as in if you have one researcher, it will take 200 ticks. If you have two, then you only have 100 ticks, so it's quite a significant jump in that case. But the difference between 70 and 71 researchers is much less, so that gives us kind of like that gradient in the reduction of total time. And then we do that calculation every time we attempt to figure out whether the research job has been completed. So that means they can raise and lower the researchers, and it has immediate effect on how long it's going to take. But it never takes longer well, that's not worded correctly. Any progress that has been made, any elapsed time, is always maintained. So it can't be. If they can't stop the research or research something else, then again the elapsed time is maintained. So if they add 10 people and then remove 10 people or remove 5 people and go back to 10, the progress is still counted. So it's always moving forward effectively. And that's basically it. So that calculates the initial time by dividing it by the researchers. Then we take the result of that and take away the current elapsed time. Current remaining time. I think that's that. Yeah, sorry, elapsed time. The new elapsed time even from the remaining time effectively, and that gives us kind of the full proper remaining time that we save. We're really only saving the remaining time for the timer. We could calculate it within the widget, but obviously that means we'd have to do it every time. So since we've got the result here, we just store it for convenience. That's just debugging stuff, and we move on to complete research. So the complete research does a number of things. It stops the current research project, that removes all of the current researchers and puts them back into the castle's population pool. We get the research project index, and then we remove it from the array of research projects. We add it to the available technology, or the name of the technology to the available technology array, so that means it can be used later in later parts of the game. And then we call this notify, and this notifies on the player controller, and it's on the, because all this work is done on the server, this is replicated to the owning client, and we're in a castle, so the owning client, we get the player controller here, the owning client is obviously the player. Now we could have used the get owner, perhaps might have been a slightly better approach, and perhaps we need it, that may not be right. The owner of this would be better call to make. One problem that we've got, or I've got at the moment, is that the the castle doesn't have a reference to the sector, so it makes it much more difficult to do things for the player or even modify the sector. So there's a number of complications with this notify process. Now the notify process, this one goes over to the client, and this is trying to be, and we'll see how it pans out, but this is trying to be a very generic notify function. So rather than having what will inevitably be a notification for research completion, resource depleted, etc., we call this generic function with a type, a name, and a sector. So the type is going to be one of the kind of notification types: research completed, resource depleted, so on and so forth. Name would be something like the resource or the research or some other thing that's been done that can be referenced by the name, and the sector is obviously the sector that's affected by that notification. And then we call an appropriate function, and we call a more specific event on the player controller so that individual components can listen to those events, particularly UI components, without having to listen to the generic one and then kind of everything knowing everything. The research panel, for example, can listen to the research completed one to do some changes and clean up, which, as we can see, aren't 100% working, but and that's when it comes into here. So when the research panel is created, we listen to the research completed event. When that occurs, we try and find the technology widget for that research. We remove it from its parent. We remove it from the array. We remove it from its parent as well. No, sorry, that's a different one. So then we remove the current research widget, the research widget that we've created with the timer and the other icons, etc. And then we just reset that variable so that it's clear. Now the problem is that this notification can occur, and then the tick can occur before the removing of the research project is replicated to the client. So this removes the research project from the server, but not from the client. So that needs to be replicated to the client, which it is, but unfortunately too slowly for most scenarios. And that's why the research disappears and then almost immediately comes straight back again. So that's why we have to go. We'll just see if the change to the owner has caused any problems. I believe the castle's owner should be the player, so yeah, that's fine. That would be a slightly better code. Although obviously it would be nicer if that wasn't so long-winded, but we'll address that some other time. So what else we got? Nothing really there. So yeah, I think that covers most of the, if not all of the changes that I made regarding the research. The research is almost working because of that. Now, to address the problem that I've got with the research project being removed but it being recreated, I'm thinking of changing the research project's objects themselves. So in my castle I have this initialize research projects call, which we are looking at. That is done at the event begin play call of the castle. So this is effectively setting up all these research projects within the castle every time a castle is created, which sounds great. Definitely when castles can obviously be created in the normal flow of the game. And these are actually being created as player research objects. That's what they are internally. They have a number of properties, sometimes related to not as many properties as I thought actually, so particularly related to doing the research. Now my proposal here is to change these, so rather than representing a research project, they literally just represent the technology. So they would actually replace the available technology and or the unlocked technology as well. I think I've just got two because I've created them at different points and haven't cleaned them up yet. So the research projects actually just become designs, I think I'll probably call them, because that's kind of the terminology of game users. And they'd also have a couple of extra properties, at the very least a property for whether they have or have not been researched. And then simply I can remember or use those research projects, or what will be the designs, for everything. So I'll be able to use them in the offensive panels, I'll be able to use them in the blueprint panel that's yet to be done, and so on and so forth, and I won't have to worry about them disappearing in the way that, or reappearing in the way that they are. So that's a change I'm going to go through now. So to start with, we're going to just modify the data structure for the player research, and we'll have a new variable. Put it here. So I think in the game it calls these things kind of designs and blueprints and that kind of thing. I think blueprint would be a bit ambiguous, so I'm just going to go for unlocked. And now by default that's false. And within the castle we're just going to change the variable to signs. Change all my variables. And that's the allocation of researchers, which is fine. In the research panel, So we still need to remove the technology widget map item because the research has been completed. We don't want that research to exist on the list. But what we will need to change is in the event tick, when we're iterating over the designs, we not only want to know whether the map contains the research, but before that, we want to know that it's not locked. So we can just say, if it's unlocked, then we don't care about it. So only if it's not locked do we want to try and create a new widget for it. Let's see if we can tidy that up. I think that's going to have to be not and. So that way we can just work off the true value instead of having to worry about the false value. So if it's not unlocked and the technology widget map does not contain a widget for this technology, then add it. I suppose that the only reason that the widget won't exist immediately is because the technology isn't available for because the player doesn't have the resources to make one. So a design or technology is only available if the player has the resources to create at least one of those things, and that's why technologies may appear, but that's not checked in this case. One thing that I'm thinking of adding to the player research, I'll probably rename that soon, but player research is the recipes, or the recipe required for this sector to make this thing. And that way I can ensure that the widget is only created when it should be. But these two conditions will work for now. So we need to remove unlocked technology and available technology. Let's see where it says that's in use. Yep, so instead of adding it to the research project index, we need to get a reference to the research project. Break it. So one thing that's occurred to me is that it's going to be possible still for this change, the change on the research and the locked flag, to not get to the client as fast as the notify. So we might end up in the same state where the notify process gets to the panel, which cleans up the widget, but then immediately is put back in this case. So we might need to branch on that, and then we can clean up. So if it's unlocked, yeah, okay, so we'll come back to that because I think that's the way to solve it, but we won't do that just yet. See if this actually works. Not quite. Okay, so somewhere we've got a reference to the available technologies, I think. Just need to find out where that is. Research handling. Okay, don't know why we had errors before. Yeah, so it immediately comes back again. It's unfortunate that the solution didn't resolve the issue. Okay, so we need to say if it is unlocked, we need to make sure we don't have a widget. So, does it contain it? If it does contain it, we need to remove it. So we can use that. Find technology. So from a widget, we can just immediately remove it from the parent. Like so. And if it's not unlocked and we don't have a widget already, then we can create one. So that should actually we'll do this. Get also want to remove that widget. To remove it over here. So remove it from the map as well, so that we don't have it lying around. And we will not remove it from the parent, and we won't remove it from the map in the notification case. All we'll do is remove the research widget. That should produce the right result. So this widget, the countdown widget, should be removed immediately, and then the technology is removed later, but so insignificantly fast in the grand scheme of things that it's not noticeable, although they don't happen to happen at the same time. I think that's pretty much it. So the timer's not quite perfect in the time that it says. I think there's a bit there where it doesn't quite look like it's stating the right number, and it does hang on the kind of 0 point, 0 loops and 0 values for perhaps a little longer than it feels right, but conceptually it's functionally it's doing what it needs to. It just needs a bit of polish. So the technology is disappearing correctly. Now the advantage is that the castle still has an array of designs, so I know that that's available to use on the other screens. So the next kind of straightforward thing that I need to do is get that game speed image working up here. So I have put that currently hard coded in the layout, and what we will do, I think it probably will be better to have that as its own widget, because it's not so much the layout's responsibility. I'll put it in the panel components, even though technically it's not. Well, I won't put it in the panel components, but I may end up kind of renaming that and making it a bit more generic. So this is going to be pretty straightforward. Find the image. That's good. We've actually named these ones appropriately. So we need a variable which is our images. It needs to be an array. Nope. Array of 3. And we'll set it up in the game event preconstruct. We need the game state that has our game mode in it. Get game speed. Let's call it speed, yeah. So the speed is basically an integer of 1, 2, 3. Perhaps we'll use 0 as a pause option. So I think it's 1, 2, 3 anyway. Just jump over to check game mode, game state. Yeah, so 0 sets the seconds. so this is seconds per tick. So this returns how many seconds it should take for a tick. We use that within our handling of the research here. So the divide here is not actually the game speed, which is just 1, 2, 3. It's 1, 4, 14 for each of the different speeds. We obviously have 0 to account for 0 speed. So we'll borrow that, paste it here. That up. So actually we're probably going to duplicate this in the event tick, so I'll change it into a function in a moment, but for now we will don't think we actually need to do that because we can just plus 1 to it, not plus minus 1 to it. So if we take 1 away, we'll get index based, a 0 based kind of game. Now that's because we don't have a pause icon within our game speed images done here. We have the almost standing still, the walking and the running. Potentially we should have a 0 which is paused, because if we do that, I don't have an icon for it. That means we don't have to minus 1, and we can add an icon for it if ever we need to. So set brush on the speed image, set the brush. We need to get the appropriate frame effectively. Make brush from white. That's in there. Just that down. So I say all of this is just going to be a function. And we only do it in the event pre-construct so that whatever the... Actually, I don't know if that's even going to work. Yeah, maybe we don't need it there at all. Okay, so we now just need to find that widget. So now we can see straight away the running version, because the default game speed is 3, or effectively fastest. We can jump over here and change it, and should now be the slightly faster one. Good. And just to check all the frames, we'll just do the final one. Yep. So now we need to be able to change the game speed. So for that, we want to just be able to click the widget itself. So override function. Where is it? Mouse button down. So we need to know which button it is, because left click goes up, right click goes down. So we check left and right. The same process that we've done in most of the other, or if not all of the other clicks. There may be some rules about who can and can't change the game's state speed. Either the host can change it, either any player can change it, or either no player can change it. Games mode. Where's it gone? State. So we need a custom event in our game state. We need to say that needs to run on the server and is reliable. And that will be change game speed. Input will be an integer, which is the speed. We want to clamp that at the moment to be 1 to 3, so that's inclusive, so it can be 1, 2 or 3, just in case someone tries to set the speed to the wrong thing. We could have pause. Pause could be 0. Say, have to investigate that, or there may be other better ways to pause it, so we'll leave it for now. And then we want to set the speed. Now obviously this is going to run on the server, it's going to replicate it over to all the clients, but the server and the server logic will immediately use it. So if they're pressing the left mouse button, so get game state and change game speed. Game speed. So we need to get it, take one away from it, so it's left, sorry, we need to add to it, and then set it there. Rather than calling that twice, we will have a local variable just so that we don't have to call that event twice in case it changes or otherwise. New speed. So we'll set that here, and we'll set that there. In the case of a left click, it's the plus, in the right click, it's the minus. And then in both cases, we'll call the event with the new speed. Probably just want to reference that, otherwise we're casting it twice. Clicks don't work, that's probably because the image is stealing them. So canvas panel, be visible. Sometimes I always struggle to know when these actually work. Yeah, it's not working yet, so it may be that the panel needs to be visible. See if that works. Yep. So right click, new speed -1. Shouldn't be 0. That's better. Current value is 2. should work. I've got confused. I think this is created for no, that's replicated. Let's try. See if that actually gets a message to the right place. Yes. So I'm not really sure why that's not getting through. The game state begin place occurs on both. My random output here works. This event doesn't seem to be working. Obviously isn't right. By the way. So it works if it's all on the client. Should work if it's on the server. little confused with this. Have similar logic within the player controller, and it works without fault, although I don't go straight from widget to server. But no, actually I do, because I call this stop research. So for example, when I select a different research, we come straight here from the widget, and that works correctly. And yet this one doesn't work. There's nothing that I can see that implies that I can't do it in the game state. Let's try. So just kind of routing it through the player controller. Instead. See if that makes any difference. Apparently it does. Yeah, so we don't, the custom event here. So game state. The only difference is we just don't have this as a run on server. We'll do a quick check though, just in case I at some point call it incorrectly. Like that. Player controller. So we could probably just change it. Just change the speed directly here. Because then we don't need the has authority. Let's just do that. There's no real point in having that over here. Set the speed. It's a bit slow in terms of handling of the click. I think that's probably because it's just on a mouse button down event, and I think if I click too quickly, it's counting it as a double click. Have a quick look. See if there's a better container. I mean, technically a button probably makes most sense, but a button has awkward animation stuff, so just use a button. So a button has an on-click function that we can handle. Get rid of any of the padding. Handle that. So yeah, I think I had that problem before. Yeah, the problem with using the buttons on a button is that I can't tell which mouse button is pressed. So, stick with this. Yeah, as I say, it's just when we double click, so what we could probably do is jump into here.
Imagine this. Your favorite true crime podcast is playing. The host is about to reveal the identity of the killer. But just as the big moment arrives,
Fine then.
something else dies. Your phone signal. With Spotify Premium, you'll never have to kill your fun again. With
Do it
offline
this way.
listening mode, you can save your favorite podcasts for data-free streaming anywhere, anytime. And you can try it free for 30 days. Tap the banner to learn more.
Oops, did I just take it away from the wrong thing? Odd that when I took it away from the other function, it suddenly realised that it wasn't available in this function. Seems to work better now, and the double click doesn't actually work, doesn't happen. Maybe a slightly alternative approach. say it's not handled. No, that doesn't. So if I click quickly on it as an unhandled event without this, you kind of lose that click. So now I don't lose so many clicks in that case. Will do. So that should mean that if we do this, we're on fast speed, that goes round about once a second. If we slow the game down, that should now be nearer to every 14 seconds. Which is quite a while to wait, but there we go. And then somewhere in between that's every 4 seconds. And then finally back to full speed. Okay, so that's good, it's working. So I think the final thing that I wanted to at least make a quick start on is switching between the different panels here, because we have the army one, we have the resource one, and we have the research one done. So we need to allow the switching to work. This is a variable of widget switcher 1, isn't particularly great. It's going to be panel container. So, research panel. Yeah. Resource panel. Army panel. So, probably want them to be in some kind of order. If we work clockwise around the kind of control, that's approximately the order they'd be. Now with those, we want to tie up to the icon click here, the header image as I've already got it called. We've got a mouse button down event on it, so we can create a binding for that. Make sure that works. Just need to remove those extra so we get the click here, and in the research panel so in this case we just want to exit the panel. It's not up to this widget where we're going. And exit panel. So in previous occurrences I've had all the panels, well I do have all the panels actually, and do we want them all based on that one? Pass. That. Research panel, resource panel, and army panel. Yeah, so they're all based on the panel. So it's the panel that needs that event. Not research panel. So we still call that event, but now it's just the generic event. Slightly cleaner in that case. Call that the leave panel, what do we call it in this case? Edit image. Edit image. Call it the header image too. So the army panel does need to do something more. Is that right? Yeah, so this is referring to the unlock technology, which we've removed. So I have to deal with that. So now in the layout, we want to bind to that event. All the same. I think it's because it was specialized and now it's not. So in all of these cases, we actually can just listen to it and tie it to the same event. Because we're always going to go back to the root panel. Obviously we don't have the root panel yet, but we will have. So we will create a new canvas panel, drop it in there. And we'll call this the root panel. Small bit of space. We haven't the space in any of the others. Then for the panel container, we can just for convenience or simplicity, we can just do it by the widget index, because we don't care about the actual widget itself. So this is our panel. Because we've shuffled them around, our research has moved. So what we can do is quickly create a root panel. So we'll just have 3 images in here now at the moment. Probably put them in a vertical box just to make it tidy. And that will be the research. Will be the mining. I think that's the one. Screen title. Go with that one. And combat. Can I go for it? Fight. Don't know what I called the swords. May have called them something like they're now offensive. And I don't think we need to do anything special with them, so this will be research image, mining image, and offensive. Tie up the events for these. Quickly get all the event functions in place. So in this case we don't want to exit because we will actually want to enter a given panel. I think we do have an enumeration for this from previous occurrences. Maybe called it screen. I'll go with that. We'll rename it shortly. We have the handled. Call that. So in this case it's the offensive, so it goes into combat. This one's mining. Resources as it is there. No? Or not? Don't know what I did wrong there. May not have saved and compiled it before I added that. Combat. You happy? Yeah. Resources. Research. Sort of them. Then back in the layout, you need to delete that. Take the root panel. So we can see it's got all of its little icons. Just center it. Where's that put it? No. Take that. Active widget. Gives us those icons. Obviously we've got stuff to do to fix them, but it gives us a starting point. can then push all of that over a bit, because we'd really want to do the boot panel first. That's it. So we can reuse this custom event with any other occasion where we can go into different panels. Sometimes we can get to different panels from other panels, so that may be necessary to do in the future. Switch on all the variations. Now in this case we want the resource panel, research panel, and combat or army panel as we've called it. And container. That we will set active widget. This. Then we can tie up that to all of those, put that somewhere in the middle. Army panel, research panel. Research panel, combat. But research there twice. That's all of them done. Sets the active widget. Should be everything we need. Sorted. Except we can't go back. I can't go back probably because this blueprint's broken. So we can fix that. So rather than iterating over the technologies in this unlocked technology, we actually want to iterate over our designs now. Quite sure what we were inserting, so we're just going to get rid of that. Connect them so we can connect that up. So for each technology, we need to break it. We need to add the name to the map. If it's been unlocked, we need to get that check in. If it's unlocked, add it to the map. Create the appropriate Git, edit the map. That's everything. Doesn't actually need much from the design at the moment. But once we start working through the design recipes and whether you can actually create them or not, then there'll be more to do there. So obviously we don't have anything, but the panel actually works now, so we fix that issue. So if we go to the research and we research our stone, hopefully it'll turn up on the other screen. There we go. And it even uses the right icon as opposed to the blueprint icon, so the resources are still running, the research works, and that's all for the night. So that went nice and smoothly. Still quite a few of the screens to do, but we're in a state where we've kind of got the core information. So we go to run it, we can see just slightly in the background we've got the research screen, which that's kind of functional. We've got the combat screen that's functional. We can get the defense screen up, so the repair and the defense and the blueprints, we can deal with them too, so we can add them to this root panel, get them dropped in fairly quickly. The underlining functionality of obviously the repair and the defense will come later, but we can at least get the screens in place and make sure the information is available. And then once we tie in the resources, we can make sure that those particular blueprints are usable, or designs are usable in the right contexts. So it's looking good at the moment, with the information being readily available to make those things work. So obviously the root template can be fleshed out because we can utilize the population, and we should see the population change when the research is ongoing. We should see it in there. So what we can do is just bring that down to 3 seconds and jump over here. Hopefully that'll turn up as soon as it's finished. There we go. So there's no notification on the minimap, or there's no sound obviously or anything like that, both of which we need to do, but we've actually got the mechanism in place to do that. The notification that we saw earlier in the player controller, all we need is the map to tie up to that notification, and then it will be able to say, well, if you get this notification from the player controller, then we need to highlight this sector, like it does in the game. Particularly if the player isn't on that sector. I'm not sure what it does if the player is on the sector, but either way, it should be fairly easy to do with that. So yeah, that's all I'm going to do tonight. Should be back again in a couple of days, but hopefully in between time I'll be able to get some more bits and pieces done. Progress seems to be going fairly well at the moment, but there's still obviously certain elements that aren't implemented, so there's definitely going to be some complication a bit later on with those. So yeah, thanks for watching, and that's all for tonight. Thanks very much.